Welcome, action fans, and thanks for joining us for another edition of All 90s Action All the Time, as we continue our trawl through the 90s films of Sylvester Stallone. I'm your host, Scott Murphy, and I can reassure you that after dragging ourselves through two major duds, we have finally struck gold, as today we are talking about Cliffhanger. Alongside me to chat about this Stallone classic is my regular co-host. Yes, you know him. He is a screenwriter, podcaster, and a man who you will hear throughout the podcast is noticeably more cheerful in this episode. It's Mr. Craig Draheim.
I came back for you, Scott.
Thanks, man. Thanks. As always, some details before we get into the plot of the film. Oh, well, at this point, I should give my regular spoiler warning that yes, we go right through the plot of each film that we cover on the pod. So if you have not seen the film and don't want spoilers, turn off now, watch the film, come back, listen to us talk about the film. That's what you should do. Then again, if you are listening to this podcast, I'd be kind of surprised if you hadn't seen this film, but maybe even not. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, on to our background details. Cliffhanger came out on May the 28th, 1993, and was directed by Rennie Harlan, who also directed the likes of Die Hard 2, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Cut Through Island, a bunch of other stuff. And the writing credits are a bit complicated. It was based on the initial premise from American rock climber John Long, with an original screenplay by the late Michael France, who sadly died in 2013, age 51, whose other credits include the likes of GoldenEye, Hulk, and The Punisher. That is the 2003 Ang Lee Hulk movie for those wondering. The other one was The Incredible Hulk. So not that one, the Ang Lee one, the Eric Bana one. But also the script had some rewrites by Stallone himself, who also got a writing credit. On the review front, it currently sits at a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, which is the joint highest rating of any film we have covered so far in the film. So pretty low bar, but like, there you go. 69% on Rotten Tomatoes based on 54 reviews, and 60 on Metacritic based on 16 reviews, and finally a 3.1 on Letterboxd. All of those are amongst the highest scores we have dealt with so far. Under Siege beats it on Rotten Tomatoes, but doesn't quite beat it on Metacritic. Under Siege has a 58 on Metacritic, and Under Siege is also the other film that has a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. As well as that, the film was nominated for 3 Oscars: Best Sound Effect Editing, and Best Visual Effect. Unfortunately, it came out in the same year as Jurassic Park, so Jurassic Park won all those awards, and it was also, conversely, was also nominated for 3 Razzies, for Worst Supporting Actor for John Lithgow, which seems insane, Worst Supporting Actress for Janine Turner, and Worst Screenplay. The film made $255 million at the global box office off a $70 million budget, making it Stallone's highest grossing film since his 1985 double whammy of Rambo 2 and Rocky 4, both of which did $300 million. And you'd think that'd be a big success for Carl Cole Pictures, but it was not, because of the complicated financial arrangement for this film. They didn't make that much money off it, and actually went bust only 2 years later, sadly, because they produced a lot of the fun action movies of the 80s and early 90s. When it gives me a lot of nostalgia every time I see the Carlco Pictures logo at the start of a film.
Same here. And I don't know, I guess as I get older, can't handle the Razzies, because especially what you and I do with reviewing, Scott, and as much as we've watched, there is so much worse than most of what the Razzies will put up.
That is so true. Yeah, I mean, like, the things that get nominated, some things that get nominated for the Razzies and win Razzies are like utterly deserving. You know, like things like Freddy Got Fingered, Battlefield Earth, you know, these are some of genuinely the worst films ever made. But like some other things, you're just like, oh, they just don't like these people. And I think it's one of those things, it was just like, they're so lazy that sometimes I think they just have actors that they just assume are in bad movies all the time, so they just seem to automatically get nominated. And Stallone's pictures have often been nominated for the Razzies, and I feel like it's just one of those things of just being like, oh, it's a Stallone picture, we'll nominate it for a bunch of stuff. Because it doesn't feel deserving of, like, I'm sure there was a lot worse screenplays in 1993. It's not an amazing screenplay, it's cheesy, it's action, you know, but again, I've seen definitely a lot worse. Janine Turner's performance as Jesse is not amazing, but it's fine. And the John Lithgow one is, I mean, he's got a dodgy English accent, but he is, he's genuinely brilliant in this film. Yeah, he's so much fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's really kind of hamming it up to and it's very entertaining.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Razzies definitely misguided on this one. And like you say, because of the types of films we covered, both on our respective horror podcasts, on this podcast, of the kind of movies we've watched, and we've both watched a lot of terrible movies, and so have a pretty decent knowledge of terrible movies. So yeah, some of the stuff that gets nominated is just kind of ridiculous. But actually, like, moving on to the film itself, one of the things that was quite entertaining about reading about the film in terms of the research was the kind of development of the film and how this film came out of the rubble of various failed projects that Carlco tried to get as Stallone vehicles. So there's 3 of them, right? So I'll read them out to you in case you don't know. So at first they tried to make a film called Bartholomew versus Nerf. Have you heard of this?
I've heard the name, but I don't. Okay. No. Yeah.
So this was supposed to be a comedy directed by John Hughes and co-starring John Candy, where John Candy and Stallone played 2 neighbors who basically have a feud. So it's like Bad Neighbors, but like with Stallone and John Candy. And so that fell through. And then there was a sci-fi horror picture called Isobar, which is about a genetically mutated monster that gets loose on a high-speed train that was supposed to co-star Kim Basinger. And at various points had Ridley Scott attached as director, and also had Roland Emmerich attached as director. And Roland Emmerich would go on to work with Carlco because he directed Universal Soldier. And then, I think this is the most entertaining one of them all, there was an action disaster movie called Gale Force, which was described as Die Hard in a Hurricane, which actually had Rennie Harlan attached to direct. So it was the one that seemed to get closest to actually being made. But it also, it fell through. The plot of that movie apparently was, like I said, Die Hard in a Hurricane, and Stallone protects a small town against a group of modern day pirates. And the most entertaining thing about it, this is from Wikipedia, so if it's, who knows if it's true or not, the most entertaining thing I read about it was apparently, of the many scriptwriters who had a pass at the script, apparently there was about half a dozen screenplays written for this. One of those screenplays was written by Joe Esterhaz, who, because he's Joe Esterhaz, turned it into an erotic thriller, and apparently was rejected because of that, because he just turned it into an erotic thriller. Because he's Joe Esterhaz. What did you expect?
I mean, if you're gonna do it, why not do it as erotic thriller? How can you turn that stuff down?
Well, we'll go on to talk about, in a few weeks, we'll go on to talk about a film that has erotic thriller elements in it. Yeah. But that's a whole different movie. So we'll not jump the gun. We'll focus on Cliffhanger. Although, I did want to note something. So in this kind of opening scene that we get, right?
Yes.
Where we get Stallone kind of hanging on a cliff face. We get this big epic panning shot of all these mountains, which are apparently, according to the film, the Rockies, but in real life was actually Cortina d'Ampezzo because it was actually filmed in the Dolomites in Italy. So there you go. But in this scene, he's hanging there and he's chatting away to Jessie, and she says that he says he's just hanging out, and she says, I don't recognize the face, but the butt looks familiar. And you know how we kind of discussed in like the Seagal episodes of like all the Seagal action flexes, right?
Yeah.
And like all his things. Now, for some reason, I feel like Stallone really, of all the things that he wants to accentuate about himself, it is his glutes. Like he is, because in Rocky V, there's a showering scene that has a loving shot of his butt. Then Stop or Mom Will Shoot, there is a showering scene that, you know, again, it's not quite as loving, but it's still there. So like he's really wanting to point out that he thinks he's got a great ass.
Yeah. No, I think it might be because, you know, that friendly rivalry, I don't know if it's friendly or not, but between him and Schwarzenegger was, you know, had the arms.
He's got the biceps covered, so he needs to pick another body. Still needs to pick another body part. It's like, well, my biceps are good, but like they're not quite as big, you know.
Yeah.
What other body part can I pick? Well, I think I've got a great ass.
No, it does pop up a lot, and you don't realize it until it's, I guess, spoken aloud, and then you're like, oh yeah, yep, and this one, it's accentuated, yep, okay, yep. And not only that, there's kind of some scenes within this movie where there's shots that kind of glorify it. It feels like.
There definitely is. Because I was thinking about the movies we're going to cover in a few weeks. I'm like, I'm sure there's like I'm sure he's like naked at some point in Demolition Man, and then there's that, of course, famously ropey shower scene and The Specialist, you know. Like,
and then like Judge Dredd, he's wearing the tight pants and all that stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I suppose we should move on.
Yeah. We could just do the episode on that.
The episode was supposed to be a cliffhanger, but no, it's actually going to be highlights on Stallone's ass. No, Craig. Let's move on. Let's talk about the movie. Where do we go to next after Stallone ass chat?
So we go to what is one of, I think so many of these movies we've kind of watched, and they have some iconic scenes for fans, or for 90s action fans, but this is arguably one of the most famous opening scenes of, an action film. I think I could,
certainly
get a bunch of people that'll, say I'm wrong, but I mean, for me, this is very iconic. But he goes up to see his friend Hal, played by Michael Rooker, who's for once not playing a villain.
Yes, you would be surprised, listener, to find out not a villain. No, good guy.
Yeah, and I think it's just his girlfriend, not his fiance.
I think it is just his girlfriend, Sarah.
Yeah, who are kind of stuck up on this huge cliff, and Hal's knee has given out, but they go up there to get rescued, and they're very jokey and chit-chatty, and obviously they're friends, and they talk about they're gonna have dinner together later tonight, and it establishes that they've known each other for some time, and they're all really close with one another because they're all chatting, and they get the lines set across, and there's the whole thing about, what is it? They actually blew his knee getting out of a hot tub, which she thought it was always a nom injury, and then he's even kind of flirting with her jokingly. But this is when we get to the essential part of, first Michael Rooker goes across the line. It's completely fine. The winds are said to be picking up around there, so they kind of have to hurry. He gets to the helicopter with Frank and Jesse, which Jesse is Gabe, played by Stallone's love interest. Well, not even love interest. They're in a long relationship. And I don't know, again, I don't know if they're married, and that's one they never really, but they live together.
It's never established,
and they had a house
but
together.
we found out not long after that they have a house together.
Yeah, and then she starts to go across, but some of the harnesses snap.
Yeah.
So she falls out and she's hanging on for dear life. And it's either, so Hal wants to get in his harness and go back to her because the weight wouldn't be able to hold just two people on one harness, but that's going to take too long and he's not as close and she's already falling. So Gabe makes the decision to go out and get her. And then we get the famous Ace Ventura When Nature Calls scene. As we talked about before this.
Yes, that's true. With a famous raccoon scene.
Yeah.
Which has not at all spoiled this scene forever.
Yeah.
Well, for us and anybody who has seen that movie.
Yeah. It's the whole thing where he's able to catch her. She keeps saying how she doesn't want to die, but I think even other action films it seemed like, it feels like have kind of not parodied it, but paid homage.
I think it was parodied in another... I think Spy Hard parodied it as well.
Yeah.
Either one of I can't remember if it's like the last Naked Gun film or if it's Spy Hard. I think it's maybe Spy Hard that like parodies it as well.
Yeah. And her glove is slipping. He's trying to hold on and he's telling her she just needs to reach up, but she's too panicked. And then she slips and in very slow motion falls to her death. And then they all just are broken up about it. And it's much as we kind of laugh at it, it's done. Effective.
It is effective and it is super suspenseful. It's kind of made slightly funny by the dramatic slow-mo kind of drop of the kind of soft toy dog that she's got.
Yeah.
Like, it falls out her pocket or whatever.
Yeah, I think doing that, I know they're trying to show, I guess either foreshadowing or show what's, how crucial it is or what would happen. But yeah, I agree that it kind of cuts out some of the punch that it would have had.
Yeah.
If she was to just drop. And yeah, I didn't realize until watching again, I've seen this movie a ton of times when I was younger, how much they use kind of the silent slow-mo part.
Yes, there is a bunch of kind of Hans Gruber style deaths in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I had kind of forgotten just how much slow-mo was used in the movie because like you, I had seen this movie a lot as a kid. We discussed that we both had it as VHS recordings off the telly. And, I watched that, video that I had a bunch, but the last time I saw this picture, I was probably 18 and like I'm, verging on 36 now. So like, I've not seen this movie in about 18 years. So like there was certain scenes that stuck out in my head in a big way that, we'll discuss. But yeah, I kind of forgotten like just how much slow-mo is used in the picture.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it worked. I think it's hard now with, directors like Zack Snyder and all of them who have used it to like this extreme, but so that's all you can think of when you watch slow-mo, at least for me anymore.
No, I know he's kind of spoiled it. For sure.
But, at least I remember at the time not finding it a big deal. It's just,
Yeah, no, I don't remember it. I think the fact that I forgot it is, like an indicator of that, of like it didn't stick out in my head as like being like this big silly thing. I mean, now like I see it as this kind of over the top melodramatic thing that's kind of a bit funny. But I think as a kid, I was just engrossed in the kind of suspense of the action sequence that I didn't, and I think, I found it quite, suspenseful and sad and, the kind of exact response that Rennie Harlan would want from an audience member.
And I'll give credit. So I don't know. This is going to be an interesting one because it's the first that I'm a part of where one that I've seen it a bunch and two that I'm actually more than just like, it was funny, so it was fun in watching it that sense, but I actually enjoy the movie. I think it does a pretty decent job for an action movie like this of kind of without giving us huge exposition dumps of really kind of establishing all the characters.
That is true. We'll also get into where it does do exposition dumps.
Yes, that too.
And some of the characters who are entirely extraneous to the film, but like...
But at least, I mean, you get a sense of like their relationship amongst each other without what will be coming, where we get a lot of it.
Yeah, for sure. But and then we kind of, after her death, we cut away from that, and we get like a brief scene in the Treasury Department at the Denver Mint. We cut to the Denver Mint, and there's all these kind of Treasury agents counting money, and we kind of don't know what that's about. Apart, like, it basically introduces the fact that they're transporting money on a plane, and then that's basically it. So, like, yeah, most of the things that happen at the Mint basically are just kind of expository dumps of just kind of like, this is what is happening now in the plot. Yeah. Okay, tick. Tick, and we move on, and we cut back to Gabe returning to town after he's been gone for 8 months.
Almost a year, yeah.
Almost a year. And when he first is kind of riding back into town, he bumps into two early 90s stereotypes.
That was the most cringeworthy part for me.
I've written down in my notes, two extreme sports bros track down Gabe because they kind of chase after him in the car. Like, they see him drive by, and then they jump into their car and they kind of chase after them.
They're like, Gabe's back, bro. Gabe's back. And they both drive. They have this long scene of talking to each other, car, driving at, a decent speed on both lanes of the road. I'd say they're like,
it's like 70 miles an hour or something.
Yeah. Oh, so it must just be like an empty road, and they're not even looking forward.
Yeah. Do you know what it made me think of as well? Like, you remember that episode of The Simpsons where they introduce a new character into Itchy and Scratchy?
Yeah.
And it's like this
I remember that. Yeah.
cool dog, like, it's kind of like that. Or you can kind of see that the film is like, and the filmmakers are like, well, this is what the kids are into, isn't it? Like extreme sports and MTV, and they all talk like, yeah, dude, like, whoa, totally, like, I've seen Bill and Ted. Like,
yeah. And their whole purpose of the movie just seems like it's setting up, again, I guess, going back on what I was talking about earlier, an exposition of like, they're going to do a jump where, you jump and then pull out the parachute. Or
they're like skydivers.
Yeah, but he's telling them to be careful because there's a blizzard coming. And that seems like the only purpose for it is to be like, there's a blizzard coming. Yes. They pop up later, but are they really crucial to the plot? No.
They're absolutely not. And it's one of those weird things of being like, because you've seen other movies before, you're kind of like, oh, well, these are just kind of characters. We're just going to see them in this one scene. They're totally not going to have a subplot.
No, they have like a good 3 or 4 scenes of like talking to each other in a tent and calling each other cheesehead.
And they're so, like I say, they're so kind of early 90s stereotypes, and they're dressed in the most early 90s way. One of them's wearing a bandana. It's all those kind of like multicolored kind of, I think that if it looks like they're wearing Zumbas or something,
They're talking about MTV. What was it? Well, we'll get to it. There's a whole scene like
later on when they're talking about MTV and stuff like that. And, this line kind of entertained me so much that I felt like I had to, write it down. Like, Gabe, like Stallone's character, is talking about work, and one of the characters, the characters are called Evan and Brett, and Evan says, I hate that word, even when other people are doing it.
Yeah. So, that's their purpose.
That is their
Then we move on to the actual plotting, to the actual story.
Absolutely. We cut back to Gabe being reunited with Jesse, Janine Turner's character, and Gabe is genuinely, like, I've just written down in my notes, Gabe being a big martyr.
But I like that they had, because so he feels the pain from all of it and blames himself and everything, but I like that they have her call him out. Not that oh, you did all you could and you were the only one who was being cool about it. But she's basically, it's not playing into the stereotype of that it could, that she kind of becomes later on, the purposeless love interest, or, without motive, but she kind of has that character element of, I know you're full of crap. Like, it happened and we need to start working through it, or, all this stuff.
Yeah. Although I feel like she does play into another action trope, because while there is the action trope of like just the kind of damsel in distress love interest, I have noticed that there is also a lot of films where a female character who is the love interest, be it maybe she's not the love interest at the time, becomes the love interest, or like they had a relationship and the relationship is rebuilt throughout the film or whatever, and at the start of the film they're tough and resourceful and sarcastic and have a mind of their own, but by the end of the movie they're just a puddle in the hero's arms. You know what I mean? Like they just progressively lose skills throughout the movie.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. Because in the beginning, she's like, even amongst the chatting among themselves, like she's pretty strong-headed, or, independent. She's the one who says she's not just going to go with him, but it kind of indicates that even though he's been gone for a while, that they're still in a relationship in a way. Like they never officially broke it up, because she's assuming he just was taking this time to deal with it and now he's going to come back.
Yeah.
I guess that's what's kind of the thought. And he's coming to say, well, I want to bring you with me. So it seems like they aren't breaking up. They're like, both of them are trying to hold on to the relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
And she has a new horse, and which again doesn't really come into play or anything. But,
but that's just a thing. It is a fact. She does have a new horse.
Yeah.
But then we get the other side of the plot as we cut to
the expositions part.
We cut to the expositions part. Well, we cut to the money plane.
Yeah.
And
so the money is only for, so it can't be cashed in the United States because it's in $1,000 bill, which we don't have. But, they're explaining that it's only for international purposes or something. From what, I guess it's kind of given. So the only way for it there's all these codes on it, all this stuff. It's so secure.
Yeah.
And the only way for it to actually be used is by, nobody could really, what was it, or if you stole it, it'd be,
would be kind of useless. But
we'll get to who can do it.
We'll get to who can do it, because that exposition dump doesn't actually come for a while of who can do it. But like, we kind of cut back and forth a little bit of like the scene with Gabe, and then we cut to the money plane. We get a glimpse of like the thieves, hijackers plane, and then we cut back but then we get the hijacking. Now, the hijacking is done by Agent Travers, who's played by Rex Linn, who is probably most famous for being in CSI Miami, but like he seemed to pop up in loads of 90s action films as either kind of asshole FBI agents or corrupt officials, or, like various, like, you might not recognize the name Rex Linn, but as soon as you see that bald head and mustache, you will know who Rex Linn is. If you've watched an action movie in the 90s, I think.
Yeah, no, I can't even think of which one, but yeah, he's definitely one of those faces that, and that southern accent.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's all very recognizable. There's a lot of recognizable faces in this movie, in that kind of like, I don't know exactly who you are, or I don't even kind of recognize your name, but like, I recognize your face. I've definitely seen you in things.
Yeah, because even the henchman, even the one that gets, that goes first with, I can't think of his name now, I don't know it, with the long blonde hair. He was kind of one of the henchmen in a ton of 90s action movies.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
But so they had it was just supposed to be a regular FBI agent, which will pop up later, his purpose, but was with them on the plane, and he's the one who kind of notices something's off, but Travers shoots him as well as his partners, and then but he doesn't make sure they're dead, because when the pilot, the I guess corrupt pilot, after
Yes,
the charge
because
has
the
been-
pilot kills the co-pilot. So the one of them was in it, and then one of them was not.
Yeah, and he set it on like an autopilot to just let it crash, basically, so that I guess the whole plan would be, oh, this just crashed and all the money's it was unsalvageable, and then they get away with all this money. But
they also set off a bomb as well.
yeah, yeah, to add insult to injury, to make sure the job is done. So Travers goes across on the line because he's smart enough to know if he was to send the money first, they would have just left him. The pilot unlatches the money to let it go down the zip line into the next plane. But the FBI agent is still alive, killing the corrupt pilot, and then spraying in slow motion a lot of bullets into the plane, the enemy plane.
That is true. And also on the radio, so we, at this point, don't initially see the villain of the movie, Eric Quaylen, played by John Lithgow, but before we see him, we hear him on the radio, and we hear that beautiful English accent he is doing, which is pure ham, just kind of like, oh yes, I'm British, aha.
Yeah, and this was pre Third Rock from the Sun, so when Lithgow was still like seen as the villain and things, and not, Yeah,
because this is a weird thing. So when I saw this as a kid, I was not aware of that. So he played a bunch of villain roles before this. He was in a Denzel Washington action movie called Ricochet, which I've not seen. He was in a Brian De Palma film called Raising Cain, which I've not seen. But so he's played villains. But when I first saw this as a kid, the only thing I had seen John Lithgow in was Harry and the Hendersons movie. Yeah. So I just saw him as this kind of cheerful, kind of, lovable kind of character. And I was like, why is he the villain? It didn't make no sense to me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because I think I can't remember when I either watched it around the same time. But I knew, about Third Rock from the Sun when I watched it.
I can't remember if I saw it just before Third Rock or around the same time as Third Rock, because I didn't see it at cinema or anything so I probably would have seen it around the time of Third Rock, because I think Third Rock started in 96 or something.
Okay.
I'm not double checked that, so I would need to double check it. But so maybe around the same time. Not quite sure.
Yeah. And for any younger-ish listeners, Third Rock from the Sun was a famous sitcom about aliens on the planet Earth with John Lithgow, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Jane Curtin. There was it was kind of a big sitcom when it was, on at least, and then it was forgotten about. I think, I don't know.
I think so, yeah. I'm not, it's one of those shows I don't think is still got a kind of cult appeal that some other 90s shows do. But I remember it was aired over here in the UK on BBC Two, and I remember watching it and liking it. So I definitely know the show, and I would recommend. I've not rewatched it. I remember being very funny as a kid. I was going to say I recommend people checking it out, but maybe it doesn't hold up to scrutiny. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I remember it being funny.
Yeah, same here. It's basically them just trying to adapt to human life, even though there's alien. And William Shatner's in it too. Yeah. As their main leader that pops up occasionally here and there.
Yeah. It was a fun show. But I suppose we should go back to
John.
I was thinking about when you hear his accent as well. I was thinking about this. I was thinking of course it's 1993, so your options is your action movie villain can either be. Well, actually, no, because the Berlin Wall had kind of fallen there, so Russians were starting to fall out of favor. So it was mainly your action movie villain would be British or some sort of Arab, some sort of, from one of the Middle Eastern countries. So that was your main choices. I suppose the Russian villain hadn't completely died out because GoldenEye was still 2 years from now, and it obviously had a Russian villain. So mainly in this time period, your action movie villain could be Russian, some sort of person from an Arab country of some sort, or British, and that was pretty much.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it when we get to his scene, the the football scene, or in the States, the soccer scene.
Yeah.
That whole thing. But it's the very muscly Australian is another one that kind of pops up.
Yeah, that's true. I suppose there was also like Hans Gruber, so I suppose there was also like the kind of the German villains, but they also tended to tie into the communism thing because they tended to be East German.
Yeah. The FBI agent he shoots the plane all up, and then the original cargo plane holding the money finally blows up, and he almost gets a death that you would associate with a villain because he turns around, he has that scream and all that, but it sends the money, it's still onto the cord, I guess, but then it drops. And so there's 3 cases. They drop somewhere over the Rockies, but the plane can't hold on much longer because it's been shot up. So they crash land somewhere again in the Rockies that are very clearly the Rockies.
Yeah. I think some of the minor scenes were shot in Durango in Colorado, but yeah, most of the film was shot in Italy, in Cortina d'Ampezzo. And I'm being my fiance is Italian, so I'm being very careful with that pronunciation, just in case she won't listen to this episode. She's not an action fan, but just in case she ever does listen to it, I can say I did pronounce it right. So for our Italian listeners,
just record her saying each of them and then put it over your voice.
Yeah, I'll just dub her into the episode.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Actually, I did want to mention as well that this stunt is in the Guinness Book of Records as the costliest, costliest aerial stunt on film. And the stunt guy who did it, who I mean, like literally, he didn't actually make it into the second plane. It was like a bit of careful editing there, but the stunt guy, Simon Crane, was paid $1 million to perform this stunt, and he actually went on that wire between 2 planes from 15,000 feet in the air, and he deserves every penny of that $1 million, I think.
Yeah. No, that was, I guess watching it now, because there's some where you can obviously tell when it's like a dummy going over the edge or stuff like that, especially when they're doing that sled down the hill. Like there's a switch. But there's some stuff that was played that is like, man, I know the digital effects at the time wouldn't have been good enough to make it look that real. So I don't know. There were certain things where I was like, I think that was really done. Wow.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of the stuff that's really done. Like a lot of the climbing stuff was really done as well. Like a lot of the climbing stuff was done by this guy called, Stallone's double for a lot of the climbing stuff was a guy called Wolfgang Gluck, who sadly died in a car crash, during the filming of this in 1992. But apparently at the time he was known as one of the world's best climbers or whatever. And yeah, so he did a lot of the stunts, climbing wise. And, so yeah, a lot of it was done practically, and there's some really, really impressive stunts here. And I think talking about the plane stunt, one of the kind of slightly unfortunate things is the rest of the movie's really fun, and I enjoy the movie. I think it's a good movie, but it kind of doesn't live up to the tension and suspense of the opening scene and this scene, the mid-air hijack. Like, they're so impressive, it kind of blows everything else out of the water.
Yeah, I'd agree. And there was a part, I guess checking the time too, right before I start watching it, and then knowing the time, I was like, oh, like this is way longer than it needs to be through watching, because it does start to feel that drag. Especially when you're getting into the dude bros subplots and stuff like that are just not essential at all.
That is true. Cause yes, this movie's like an hour and 53 minutes. And yeah, it's like an hour and 45 without credits, but even so, you feel like it could have been cut down. Maybe, it could have been cut down to like 90 minutes, 90 to 95.
So,
go ahead, Craig. We roll on.
Okay, so they crash, and some of the co-pilot dies, but the rest of the crew are kind of around, and that's when we finally get to meet Eric Quaylen, played by John Lithgow, and he basically wants to kill Travers, and this pops up several times in case you're not aware, but Travers is the only way to read the device to kind of figure out where each of the three cases are, because they have tracking elements on them. And there's 50,000 variations in a 15-second interval that you have to put in the code. So he's basically telling Eric Quaylen, if you kill me, then you'll never find your money. But they need help, so that's when Crystal?
Yeah. Played by Caroline Goodall.
Yes, who is Eric Quaylen's I don't know, supposed to be his
I think it's supposed to be his
lover. I don't know.
Yeah, the movie never fully settles on what she is to him, like whether she is a girlfriend or just a fling, or like, they have a business relationship and a sex thing on the side. Like, it never really properly kind of settles on like one thing.
Yeah, because it has lines that keep countering it. There's like the whole thing about him talking that she'll make a fine wife someday or something to another man. And then, it goes back and forth on what it's deciding. But she radios in saying that they're just a bunch of hikers that got lost. And it ends up going to Jesse, Hal, and Frank, who are in the office. Jesse hasn't told them that Gabe came by. And basically they're just sitting around, and Hal is critiquing Frank's artwork of a banana eating a monkey.
Yes, and possibly, it's certainly one of the most random scenes in the movie. Yes. And Frank is, of course, played by Ralph Waite, who, as we all know, was the dad in The Waltons. And for younger listeners, The Waltons was a TV program in the 70s. I want to say.
Yes.
Maybe went on into the early 80s. And it was, I don't know, like it was set on like a farm or something. It was like in the Old West in a farm, or
it was one of the many family or, sitcoms in the 70s that were.
Yeah. It's kind of, because I always confuse it. I always confuse The Waltons and Little House on the Prairie, because I always think they're the same program. Like, isn't that they just do the same? Like, the only thing I know about it is, like, I watched a few episodes I remember when I was a kid, and like, the only thing I truly remember is the "Night, John Boy." That's it.
Yeah. Which I think then was parodied on, Family Guy, or people would know about the parody from like Family Guys or whatever.
That's true. That's true. But the thing I wanted to mention as well about this scene is when Crystal phones in, like she basically phones in, and then basically they agree to go up. Like Mountain Rescue is basically already going to be on the way. Like Janine has confirmed that they'll send somebody up. But then after she's confirmed that they'll send somebody up, Crystal then goes on to this sob story about like somebody needing insulin. And it's just like, that's entirely unnecessary. Like they've already agreed. You don't have to twist their arm more.
Yeah. And I don't know. It was like it seems like it was something she would have said in the beginning, or I don't know, because it's like trying to speed them up, but it's already an emergency, so they're already
so they're already coming fast. And then the thing that compounds it is like John Lithgow's character, plays it as if this is like a stroke of genius. Well, Travers, would you have thought of that? Because he spends the movie kind of hating on Travers, but it's just like, no, it's not a stroke of genius, Quaylen. Like, they were already coming fast. They already knew it was an emergency. They know a blizzard's coming. They're already agreed. Like, it was just a totally unnecessary thing. It was just over egging the pudding at this stage.
Yeah. And so, but because of the blizzard element, they can't fly up there. So Hal's just going to go alone. Or is he? Because Jesse knows that somebody's also in town. That is maybe the best in the business. The only one that can, get up there faster than Hal.
Yeah.
I guess.
I guess, because it's Stallone. And he's the star of the movie. So therefore, he has to be the best at everything in the movie, because that's how action movies work. The one thing I was going to talk about as well, in this scene where she kind of essentially bullies him into joining the rescue, like that is what she does. At this stage, I was like, nearly, apart from Stallone is, I mean, he is not as underpowered as he was in Stop or My Mum Will Shoot, but then he literally could not be any more underpowered than he was in that movie.
Yeah.
But he is acting on maybe about, I want to say about a 7, and nearly everybody else in the movie is acting on an 11.
Yeah.
Like all of the henchmen, John Lithgow and Travers and Jesse and Michael Rooker's character Hal, like they're all like just barking, like chewing on their lines, like screaming things. I just, like, throughout the movie I was like, man, these people are cranked up.
I know. I felt the same way. There's certain parts, and later on, where you see all the henchmen like going back and forth between one another or things like that. It's like, gee, calm down. What are you going on here?
It got to the stage where like people were kind of shouting and screaming so much and like just snapping at each other violently. I was like, man, like somebody needs to like hand out some Valium or something. Yeah. Like people need to just relax. Like the high blood pressure on this.
Yeah, it gets to the point where you think, even the ones that don't, where every member of this elite, team of Waylands talks about how they're going to kill another member. They're threatening to shoot each other. And
they are the most misfit band of rogues who are just like all in it for they're entirely portrayed as just all in it for themselves. And like some of them just get to the point where they don't care about the money and they just want to kill other people. It's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yes. So Gabe Stallone, he's talking about that you don't get this, or you lose the feel of climbing, and he doesn't want to do it anymore, and Hal will be just fine. But he goes up there, and so at the next scene we see Hal climbing up. He gets to a certain ledge, and obviously Gabe is already there. He beat him up. And but Gabe kind of gives the, after we handle this, I'll be out of your hair. Hal threatens to kill him by pushing him over the edge, but wants him to live with it. His guilt. Yeah. Which I guess,
think, like, what surprised me about that scene was, like, Hal's initial lack of surprise of seeing Gabe mid-mountain after not seeing him for 8 months.
Yeah, because it also talks about how Gabe just basically ducked out for the funeral, or right at, I don't know.
Yeah, like, basically straight after the accident happened, it seems to suggest.
But then, what also in the movie I realized after watching it this time is that Hal never admits to his, like, there's never any resolution in that, because the fact that he brought up, his girlfriend who didn't know how to climb to this very dangerous spot, and he doesn't take any responsibility.
That is true.
They just deal with this horrible thing together, and then somehow like buddy again.
Yeah, we don't care about that. Move on.
Yeah. But so they're going to kind of work together. It's uneasy, but then they come across Quaylen and his crew who basically threaten them and say they'll kill them if they don't help find these 3 cases.
Yeah, and I love this exchange as well, because like Gabe asks like what what are they looking for? And like Travers is like, none of your business. And then John Lithgow's like doesn't give a fuck. He's quite happy to give out the information. So he gives the line, so what are you looking for? And he's like, well, shoes, socks, $100 million, the usual.
Yeah.
Once again in his beautiful plummy English accent.
Yes. No, I don't know. I mean, John Lithgow, he just played, again, accent and all, he plays in such a way where you can tell I think that's what makes it so much better with scenes with him, is that he's just enjoying it. It's kind of when we went back to our Seagal thing with like, Michael Caine or whoever, but he even gets more screen time than somebody like Michael Caine on Deadly Grounds or things like that. He's just going all in.
That is true. I mean, you really missed out as well on the Under Siege episode, because Like, that is beautiful stuff. The
Yeah.
combination of Tommy Lee Jones's overacting and Gary Busey's overacting is so insane that it turns into absolute genius.
Yeah.
Well, I've talked enough about those performances.
Yeah. I just miss that level of, I guess, theatrics that you don't really find anymore in action movies or most movies in general. But
I think the last time I remember seeing a performance of that scale of action villainy is probably something like Paul Giamatti in Shoot 'Em Up.
oh yeah, which he's great, yeah. But that even is done in such a, because it's making fun of it, that it,
Yeah, I suppose. It's kind of parodying it. Yeah, it's like properly off the chain.
Yeah.
You don't get like many properly off the chain performances like that nowadays.
so if you get anything from this podcast industry, we want more off the chain villains.
Oh, actually, thought of another one that's like a few years after Shoot 'Em Up. Mark Strong in Kick-Ass.
Oh yeah.
It's a beautiful performance. I really like Mark Strong as an actor. He's a really good villain. And actually real British.
Yeah. And he has a connection because he filmed that series that didn't go that far in Detroit, which was based on the miniseries, Low Sundown or Low? It was a miniseries in England about a cop that kills another, like a dirty cop, and then but then they tried to make an ongoing series in Detroit.
Oh, okay.
It didn't go far.
It didn't go.
No.
Okay.
But yeah, it, I guess, is in Detroit, so that's the connection I have. That's it.
Okay.
So they, moving on to the more important stuff, is that
back to the plot.
So they kind of push ahead. They are going alongside of a cliff, but they find one of the cases, but it's a level higher, I guess, than where they're at. And instead of taking the time to basically walk around the mountain or do whatever they need to, they just decide to send Gabe up because they hear on the radio Jesse calling for Hal. So they know that Hal is the more important one at the moment, since nobody knows that Gabe is up there with him. So what is it? So Hal is considered the more important one because he's the one Jesse is calling to on the radio, and at this point, nobody knows that Gabe, besides Jesse or the bros, know that Gabe's in town, and nobody knows that Gabe is with Hal. And so they send him up, but time to accord so he doesn't get any ideas. And at this point, we get kind of the weird relationship between Hal and Gabe, who Hal talks about how much he hates Gabe and wishes him dead, but then he is definitely holding his arm, patting his arm at one point and trying to say, if you're able to get away, do it, as he's tying this knot around his leg and that. And Gabe climbs up without anything, and they take his coat to, in the Rockies, and I'll get to that later about the element of cold that is just kind of
yes, the fact
about.
that he should have died of hypothermia several times throughout the movie is we can kind of it's an action movie, we can kind of glaze over it.
Yeah. So many of the characters are just kind of walking around with no hats and everything. But anyways,
that when he is sent up to climb for the case of money, when he's got his jacket taken off him so he can show off his biceps and stuff in his lovely wet t-shirt. And then we know he really means business because he puts his cap on backwards. Yeah. He just swivels it around, and it's now it's time for action.
This is rock climbing. But he finds the box that's buried under snow, and then he cracks it open with a rock, sees that it's all the money, the $1,000 bills, and but that's when we hear that Lithgow saying, Quaylen saying that, we don't need, when he comes back down, we don't need two guides, so send him on his way. And Hal decides he's going to warn him and tells Gabe that they're going to kill you, don't come down. So they smash Hal's face into the rocks. But he doesn't die. He just gets beaten up throughout the whole entire movie a bunch.
That is true. But I think, again, this feels like one of those classic action movie moments where the film could end here.
Yeah.
So if Quaylen, being the smart supervillain that he is, if he had just allowed Gabe to climb down, then just shoot him on the spot, as soon as he handed over the case, and not announced to the whole group that he's going to kill them as soon as he climbs down, then yeah, that would have been it. Then they would have just held Hal hostage and let him lead them to the other cases of money, and they would have got away with it. But nope, that's not what happens.
Yeah, there is a lot of talking, and there's that whole, what is it, Die Hard, where the guy's saying, if you have the chance to kill somebody, just kill them, stop talking, and then he shoots the guy saying thanks for the advice or whatever. I'm paraphrasing it, obviously, but that pops up a lot in this one, where you're like, man, all of these villains are just talking so much before they try and kill, or taking their sweet time instead of just killing them.
That's true.
But the long blonde hair, they just start, henchmen start shooting, blasting, and then obviously, because for whatever reason, he decides to also shoot the grenade launcher component of his machine gun to create an avalanche, which doesn't work for him because it sends him off the ledge because he doesn't think there's an avalanche coming down. I should step in too. Instead he just keeps blasting. Yeah. But Stallone,
our first henchman. I think that was Helden, who is played by Dennis Forrest.
Yes.
Who was also in The Mask, and sadly passed away in 2002. I didn't know that. He was only 41. Jeez. But that was his character.
Yeah, that's who I recognized him as playing other henchmen.
He was also a henchman in The Mask.
Yeah, and which we talked about. It's not worth getting into, but we talked about before recording.
I think we've had enough sidebars on on Third from a Rock from the Sun, the Waltons, other things we've kind of gone off on tangents on. We're just going to stick to the movie for the rest of the episode.
Exactly. So he is sent off, and Gabe throws the case, and it just kind of scatters the money all over flies into the wind, and they all think Gabe is dead. One of the many times they'll think Gabe is dead. And Quaylen makes the comment about his friend just had the world's most expensive funeral, and then they kind of move on.
There's a lot of fun one-liners in this movie. It's full of them. It's a very quippy movie.
Yeah, and this is where Jesse, he has Hal finally talk on the radio, saying that it was a false alarm, but don't give any codes or anything, or we'll kill you. And so Hal tells Jesse that it was a false alarm, but he kind of gives some information that only she would pick up on, like saying I'm at the tower instead of the
something bluff or something.
Yeah.
Another part of the mountain. So she knows that something's off.
And so she
heads to a cabin, like the sea point.
Yeah, there's a tourist cabin, I guess, which has all these kind of old mining memorabilia and stuff or not mining, but rock climbing memorabilia, things like that.
Yeah.
And she gets Frank to take her and saying, well, just pick me up by night or pick me up in the morning. And then, so she's there, and Gabe stumbles in, freezing to death, basically.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing fine a minute ago, but now all of a sudden, I've put here, suddenly he's dying of hypothermia.
Yeah. And so he gives a nice little exposition dump to her.
of the plot so far.
Yeah.
And also, as we all know, if you are suffering from hypothermia, if just somebody offers you a warm woolly jumper, you're immediately not suffering from hypothermia.
Yeah, because that makes up for being at peak level of the Rocky Mountains, just wearing a long sleeve sweatshirt.
Just like an old, he just cracks open the case of one of the rock climber exhibition exhibits, and it's like this kind of 60-year-old jumper that's been sitting in a glass case, and apparently can just give you the exact warmth that you need to recover from the hypothermia that you were suffering from 2 seconds ago.
Yeah. So he decides with her that they're going to he remembers, I guess, the exact locations of the other 2 boxes. And since he knows the mountain so well, and they want to beat the Quaylen and all of them to the other boxes because they know if they find the boxes, they're just going to kill Hal. And is this the point too where we get to see the dude bros again? Do they have that little scene? I can't remember I know they pop up for a tent scene at some point.
Yes, they do pop up for a tent scene, but that is not quite, they pop up for a tent scene in a little bit. There's a couple of things that happen before the tent scene. So, like, they discover the second case. Before the Dude Bros. So the Dude Bros had turned up again in a very, very brief scene where they're just like skydiving or whatever. Like, they're doing their
high fives and
they're just like extreme sports, bro. Yeah, and basically it's a non-dialogue scene. It's just like a kind of, they jump off a cliff and then they open their parachutes. But anyway, before we get back to the Dude Bros, a very important subplot. We have the scene where they discover the second case, and Gabe shows that he has a great sense of humor because he puts a tracker in a snowman. Like, basically they take the money from the second case, put the tracker in a snowman, and then write on one of the $1,000 bills, "Want a trade?" And so yes. So that happens, and also we get a second henchman death. And, which is the henchman Ryan, who's played by Gregor Scott Cummins, who is also played a bunch of henchmen in various things and kind of thug kind of roles. And this death is much more hilarious. So the henchman comes up on Gabe, with his gun. He is then blinded by a flare that Gabe has, and then they get into a fight, and then they start sliding down the side of the mountain.
And they were on sleds. Like, they're going that fast.
Like they're sleds. So initially the henchman is riding Stallone like a sledge, and then Stallone manages to flip it over, so then he is riding the henchman like a sledge, and they're just speeding down this hill. And again, this movie's kind of a little bit more gruesome than I kind of remember. Stallone smooshes the henchman's face into the snow as they're going like 60 miles an hour down the hill. Like, it gets to totally ridiculous, and just like burns off like half of his face with the friction of like just how fast they're sledding down the hill on each other.
And it's fast as if you've seen Christmas Vacation. When he lubes up his sled and he goes like whipping down the thing. It's like they seem to on each other going that fast.
Yes. And then it ends with the henchman going completely off a cliff ledge, and yet another fine super slow-mo death.
Yeah. Of falling into the darkness. And this is kind of another one of those, is Gabe dead or not? Because he hooks on to the edge with one of the rock climbing, I don't know what they're called, those pickaxe things.
Yeah.
He hooks on to it, and then he's holding himself up there, but all they see with their night vision is that I think both men flew off the edge, but Hal knows. He kind of has a smile and says something, but yeah. Little quip, I know.
Another little quip. And then it's the Dude Bro subplot. Then we cut to the Dude Bros, Brett and Evan, sitting in their tent talking about, would you rather be here in Tent City or like back home, man, watching MVTV and playing air hockey? I'd definitely rather be doing that, dude. Yeah.
So next time when you're watching MTV, maybe flip it to the Weather Channel for a couple minutes so we're not stuck out here, you cheesehead.
They're just so early 90s.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone call somebody a cheesehead.
No, neither have I. I don't know. But then neither of us are from Colorado. Maybe maybe it was big in Denver at the time.
Yeah. If there's anybody listening from Colorado.
Any Denver listeners who were around in the early 90s, can you confirm that cheesehead was a thing or not? I presume not, but
so they go, and I might be jumping, but I can't, because a couple of these scenes, these exposition dumps, I forget when they come up since they're kind of so unimportant, but when the agents come in to talk to the agents coming in to talk to the other Treasury agents. Yeah.
That happened a little while ago. I just kind of skipped over it because it's not
really important.
Yeah, it's not really important. Basically, they give us a bit of background detail on Eric Quaylen of yes, he is a former high-level military guy who then became a soldier of fortune kind of thing, blah, 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 usual action plot, backstory. And then, it's a 2-second scene that is literally the only purpose is to give us that bit of background information and to explain that he is one of the few people in the world who could launder this $100 million, even though for most people the currency would be useless because bills aren't in circulation, etc. Yes. So yes. So that happened a little while ago. And then, the Treasury agents, again, their subplot of, they spend the second half of the movie just riding around in a helicopter, picking up on the plots as it's happening. Yeah. So again, they are completely inessential to the film until the very end. And even then, they don't entirely need to be there because they're all experienced climbers, probably could have got down the mountain anyway, but
yeah, they've been doing it this whole time anyway.
They've been fine. So we can pretty much skip over the Treasury agents.
Okay, good.
The whole subplot. The only thing we should mention is one of the Treasury agents, Walter Wright, is the character name, is played by the late Paul Winfield, and he's good in things, and he is entirely underserved by his role.
Yeah, agreed. So next up, we get kind of a rekindling of their relationship scene that again isn't crucial, but they're burning all the money for fire, even though
from the second case,
and the money is burning in a not I guess money or paper wood where it'd just be a flash and then gone. It gets sustaining.
It sustains it's kind of they've got a fire made of logs of wood.
Yeah, they'll last them the whole night.
Yes.
And then he makes another little joke about the heating of this, or it's costing a fortune to heat this place.
Yes. Oh, the jokes are funny in this film, but not in in that kind of oh yeah, I see what you did there kind of way, rather than what they want them to be of ha ha ha, how witty. It's just kind of all right, that, see what you did. Yeah, gotcha.
One of those jokes are still significantly better than every single joke and Stop or My Mom Will Shoot.
That's a fair point. And again, listeners, if you've not seen Stop or My Mom Will Shoot, that will give you an idea of the little bar that you need to pass to be better than the jokes in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh dear. So we just get this kind of random couple of scenes where they're bedding down for the night. The villains in the cabin with the memorabilia, and Jesse and Gabe in the cave. And then we get the final conclusion of the Dude Bro subplot.
Yes. So it's the morning and they come across Hal and they're saying, hey Hal, we spent the whole night in the tent. Oh, we see that you're babysitting some hikers and things like that. And at first, Quaylen said, we're not monsters. We're not going to just walk over to them like normal and we'll, basically to just act like everything is fine and they can go on their way. But then he gives the nod to one of his men who then starts to is about to kill them. Hal knows this and tells the boys to run. And we get one of the other slow-mo, silent gunfire scenes where you just see the machine gun going, but there's no audio and it's in slow-mo. And one of them, the long-haired one, I don't know which one, they're interchangeable.
Okay, so I've actually written the names down. So, Brett is the one who dies.
Okay.
Who is shot by this machine gun. Wikipedia describes the henchman Kinect as Quaylen's second in command, and like watching the film, I always assumed that Crystal was second in command.
Same here.
So I'm not sure about that. I feel like Wikipedia is steering people wrong there. But like, I can see that Kinect is maybe third in command. And the other fun thing is Kinect is played by Leon Robinson, who is just billed as Leon. And he had a big 1993 because, as well as being in this film, he was the lead in Cool Runnings.
Yeah, and he also, he's one of those that more and more I realize he's popped up. So I know he was in Oz. He was in like the Temptations.
Yes, he was.
Movie.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, he's one of those people that you see in a lot of stuff without realizing it.
That is true. That is true. Cause I didn't even cause I've seen Cool Runnings a bunch and I didn't even I was like, I recognize his face. And then he looks quite different from in here. It's made in the same year, but for some reason I feel like he looks quite different in Cool Runnings to what he looks like in this movie. Oh,
yeah,
is that just
I
me?
agree. No, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. Good to know it's not just me.
So they get Brett, and then so Evan is able to basically unlatch himself, put his parachute on, and jump off the cliff. And that's one of those things where I don't think it never shows that he's been shot, even though he's bleeding later on in a way that it almost seems like he is. But he lets go of it. It's too low of a drop, so he lets go of his parachute, but he comes in too fast that he kind of smashes through some trees and gets tangled up in the trees, but he's still alive. And the only purpose of that scene, I think, is so that Frank
Frank can be dragged out. Yeah. And so, the other extreme sports dudes, bro, is Evan possibly survives the film. Like, basically, Frank gets him out the tree, kind of slings him over the shoulder, and we never see him again, so I don't know.
I think he takes him, I think it's because you don't see him in the...
You don't see him in the helicopter when Frank re-enters the film, so like...
Yeah, he must have took...
So, he must have took him down the mountain, so like, presumed alive, I'm guessing.
Because he's moaning and stuff when the wolves come to lick up the blood and bite at him.
Yeah. He's still like he's stirred by that, and so I'm guessing he's maybe still alive. He survived the movie. It's not confirmed, but we think he might be. We think he might have survived this story.
He had a happy ending.
He had a happy ending, unlike his. But did he? Because like without his fellow dude bro, maybe he never recovered.
Never jumped again.
So yes. That's gonna be your next movie.
What happens after?
What happens?
It's a dark drama about it.
Yeah. About a guy in therapy, like mourning the loss of his best friend stroke soulmate.
That'd be good.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. Sly and Jesse this is where they go into the cave and are attacked by bats.
Oh yeah, so they kind of climb through and he sticks his hand in it, and the bats almost seem like they're more of a threat than even some of the villains and stuff. I don't know.
Yeah.
Jessie, she starts freaking. This kind of fell off for me, I guess, in that sense. Because
it fell off in the sense as well where I think this is the point in the movie where we've established that Jesse is just as skilled as Hal and Gabe, pretty much. Like, she's a helicopter pilot, she's a skilled climber, you know, she knows what she's doing, she's resourceful, she's tough, she doesn't put up with bullshit from the other male characters up until this point in the film, where she just starts to act like an idiot. Where like Gabe is like, now be quiet because like you don't want to disturb the bats, and she's like, what?
Then the bats will come rushing out.
Yeah. So at this point in the movie, she suddenly loses skills and IQ points for no reason.
Yeah. I don't know why the scene because the scene doesn't add anything. It doesn't alert any of the other the villains, or it's just.
Oh, it's not like, it's not like they hear the bats and be like, hey, what's disturbed all those bats over there? Oh, look, it's the good guys. Let's shoot them. No, it's just like, it's just more kind of random padding.
Yeah. They're like, oh, well, we have a bunch of bats. Let's do that scene.
Apparently they had to shoot it separately. Apparently they weren't, apparently, Janine Turner and Sly himself weren't that keen on filming with bats. So they had to kind of film it separately with the footage of the real bats and them in the cave, kind of fake bats kind of hanging up.
Which, for horror fans, the connection can be that, Leon is in the movie Bats from 1999? I don't remember.
Oh,
now. He's like the sidekick or something.
Yeah.
There we go. A little bit of
there you go.
Trivia.
Horror trivia.
But yeah, so this now kind of cuts back and forth because Frank doesn't come up yet, or does?
I mean, like just after the bats is when Frank comes up to. So we're cutting between quite a lot of things, because we're cutting between the villains on the bridge, Sly and Jesse in the cave, the Treasury and FBI agents in the helicopter, and and Frank coming for the dude bro guy.
Yeah, and so Quaylen basically says, you stay back and wait for them to come, because this is the only way for them to get across to the next, I guess, part of the mountain. Yeah. Because there's a big kind of canyon between two of the peaks. And
there is a kind of hilarious bit where the henchmen are like, you know, because everybody shouts everything in this movie. Yeah. The henchmen are just screaming at Hal, you know, how are we going to get across? And Hal's like, we're going to get across via that bridge. And I've written down in my notes, how did they not spot that bridge?
Yeah. I mean, the whole area, it's not like it's covered in trees or anything. It's like very, you know, clearly laid out kind of level thing. That's the only.
It's very, very clearly laid out, and it's also less than 100 meters away when Hal points at it.
Yeah, that's why you need a mountain climbing expert in any situation.
Because henchmen can't see things.
Yeah, and then this is also where the henchmen are even fighting amongst themselves and want to, you know, kill each other as well. And
well, I mean,
more so.
Yeah, because there had been a scene actually earlier when they discovered the snowman with the tracker in it, where one of the henchmen, Delmar, who's played by a British actor called Craig Fairbrass, and he's like kind of like, fuck the money, you know, like at that stage. So they all just want to kill each other. I like rewound the scene like a couple of times, like when they're setting the C4, or, you know, setting the C4 for the bridge. I couldn't make out. So Craig Fairbrass, the Delmar character, says a line about blowing up that bastard as well, and which I think is meaning like the other henchmen connect. And he says something in between that, and I was like, I kept being like, does he say what I think he says? Cause I was like, is that like, I just wasn't sure. I was not sure if a racist line was said or not. I just couldn't make out. I was like, is that, what did you pick up from that?
From the one I watched, so I watched on Amazon Prime.
So did
It
I.
says-
I watched the remastered, Studio Canal remastered on Amazon Prime as well.
So he said to me that, from what I heard, that, and it'll blow up that, and then talks about his color, but saying black.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. And then I was like, even in
that's-
1993,
Yeah.
that seems like a dodgy line.
Yeah. And so I think that, I mean, that's really, but yeah, that's what he said. Because I had, funny enough, when I was watching this, it was late, and so my toddler was asleep, and so even though she's like sound asleep, I'll still turn on, especially for these episodes, I'll turn on the subtitles as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what it said, at least on the subtitles. But
Oh, so I did, cause he doesn't like enunciate the line that well. Like, so it seems kind of garbled. That's why I like, kind of put it back and listened to it again. And that's what I thought he said, but I just couldn't. And I was just like, yeah, I suppose, cause I knew that he said, like, I hope that it blows up that something bastard as well. And I was like, oh, I hope it's not. And then I was like, it probably is. Oh,
it is.
That's kind of upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So-
anyway, let's move on from the movie's brief moment of racism.
Yeah. And so this is again more the cut back and forth while they're climbing up. Then Frank comes in the helicopter and he finds Crystal, who's laying on the ground, basically as bait. Like the victim passed out. He runs over to her. She quickly grabs his sidearm and points it at him. And then, Delmar points the gun at him while they're holding Hal against a rock, like in the distance away, and he's screaming Frank, which I always remember that scene, I think just because of how he's saying it. Like he's saying it in this yell thing.
Yeah.
But to toy with Hal more, they let Hal start running to him. But Delmar doesn't like that. And so, even though he wasn't supposed to shoot Frank because he has issue with Hal, he decides to basically blast Frank away.
Who also dies in slow motion.
Yes, again, it goes into a silent. You don't hear any of the gunfire or anything. You just see the bullets spraying.
Yeah, the blood spray, and Hal's slow motion run towards him.
Yeah.
It's a pretty melodramatic film.
Yeah, but Frank gives Hal his version of like a Chekhov's gun. He hands him a knife that Hal is able to kind of conceal in his boot. So I guess it wasn't in vain for the plot.
No, Frank's death, not in vain. We will always remember Frank and his art.
Yeah. His banana eating a monkey. And the only reason why he decided to go up there or take Jessie up there is because she said she would buy some of his art. So
that is true. So the art was incredibly important to the plot.
And so Jessie should feel really bad that it cost Frank his life.
Not that we think about that at the end of the movie when everybody's like, well, that's over.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's move on to not possibly. Let's move on to my favorite henchman death. So, Kinnett finds Gabe and then basically Gabe pops up from the cave, from the underground cave system, and Kinnett is there, and then they have a confrontation, and he hits him in the leg with the pickaxe thing, and he kind of fires down at him, and so he jumps back down into the cave, and then Kinnett jumps down after him, and then at this point, Kinnett suddenly knows martial arts, which he's previously not really shown, and he is just beating Stallone down with his excellent martial arts skills, just kicking him all over the place. And again, like in the case of like everybody being at an 11 in this movie, he just keeps screaming at him. Like every time he says something, he's just like, wrong answer, motherfucker, and then just kicks him again. It's like,
because he keeps asking where the money is, and he said, I burned it. And he thinks, well, no, nobody'd be that stupid to burn it. And he keeps insulting Jessie too by calling her. He's like, no man would burn it if it was, burn a bunch of money over his life, or would choose money over his life, and he keeps calling her a bitch.
Yeah.
Is what, I mean, he keeps saying it a ton. And,
yes. Like, I mean, that is basically like half of what he says in this scene is just the word bitch and wrong answer, motherfucker.
Yeah.
All of which he is saying at like an extreme pitch of.
And so it's played initially like, oh, Jesse's going to help him because she's like, capable. And he didn't really do much to her. He hit her. She fell to the side. She grabs his gun. There's no bullets. And he says, no bullets. Yells no bullets to her as he beats up Stallone more. And you'd think, oh, she's going to play more of a part because he's just beating up Stallone. But no, she just kind of lays there and watches. And that's it for her. As Stallone and him fight.
But then, after like totally beating him down, and just as he's about to kill him with his giant Rambo knife that he's brought for the trip, like in just the most hilarious fashion, Stallone grabs him by the balls, lifts him up, and gorilla presses him onto a stalagmite that runs straight through him, and it is glorious.
Yeah, and then he just lets him drop to the ground. But I noticed also he had like brass knuckles on him that he never used, and I don't know why.
The brass knuckles were part of the knife.
Oh, okay, that's what
that was like the handle of the knife.
Okay, then that makes more sense.
Yeah. So those like gold brass knuckle things, that was the handle of the knife, the big Rambo knife. Yeah.
And then then Jessie comes up and I was like, oh, I thought you were dead, and I don't know. Again,
because at this point in the film, she's entirely useless.
Yeah. Just like in a bit, how she'll like get captured, and we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that at the end. Yeah.
Again, because the plot says so. But, so they are going for he dropped one of the radios and they can hear, well, I guess because it jumps back and forth so much, this kind of happened right before Frank's death because they hear Frank on the radio and they're reaching for it. The Frank's death happens. Hal is able to get a hold of the radio and yells there's a bomb. Basically. So you have to get out.
They have to get out of the cave system. Yeah, which happens slightly before Frank dies in glorious slow-mo.
Yeah. And so they quickly climb out, which Jessie has a little bit of trouble. It seems like Gabe has to help her climb out a little bit. And they start to go across the bridge, and they see it is about to go off. It does, and they have to do the whole run across the bridge as it's collapsing. That's what happens with it. And then I think that's when we get into Delmar and Hal. Right?
Well, actually, slightly before Delmar, we get because basically, Quaylen's supposed to be this great former military intelligence officer, and it's assembled this kind of crack squad of thieves and killers, and yet everybody is not on everybody is on different pages. I mean, he has not assembled a good team, and everybody hates each other, and everybody wants to kill everyone else. And then there is another scene of this, basically he tries to screw over Travers again. Travers explains the same thing that he's already explained a bunch of times about the thing of the codes and 50,000 variations on the codes and 15-second window to put in the codes. So they still need them because codes. And and then Quaylen just kills Crystal.
Because he is the only one to pilot the helicopter. Yes. She could too, and Travers was about to kill Quaylen or something, but says, well, now that she's dead, you're stuck with me if you want to get out of this alive too.
Yeah, I feel kind of. And it feels just like a kind of mean-spirited moment of I know Crystal's also a villain, but it just feels like one of those kind of heavy-handed action things of if you want to show that your action movie villain is really, really evil, not just regular evil, but really evil, you show him either killing a woman or beating up a woman or, throwing around a woman, something like that. And it just feels it feels unnecessary, I feel.
Yeah, because he gives the whole line too of, do you know what is it? I had the quote up. Do you know what real love is? Crystal, sacrifice. And then that's when he shoots her.
Yeah.
all up. But yeah.
It's rarely I say this about an action movie villain, but I feel that Crystal deserved better. Like, she should have died by Stallone's hand.
I agree. I think it kind of just, it feels cheap a way that is just like trying to get down the death count so they can move the plot ahead. Or, you know.
That is true. And much like the character of Jesse as well, like, again, throughout the movie, Crystal has kind of been portrayed as this like kind of ice-hearted femme fatale. And then suddenly she becomes like this kind of simpering character that you're just like, where'd this character come from? Like, just in moments before she dies.
Like, it seems like the type of character that in another action movie, it would have been the whole, her versus Jesse, type of thing.
Oh, yeah. They would have had a showdown there. They would have like a fight or something. Yeah, for sure.
So then you're not showing, Stallone, I guess, killing a woman.
That's true. It does feel like, in another movie, that's what, I feel like that probably would, because like they're both shown to be like resourceful and badass in the beginning of the film anyway. Yeah. And, that kind of would have made sense, if they had like their own showdown. And, yeah, I feel like it's a cheap death. Of all the deaths in the movie, I feel like it's the cheapest.
Yeah. And so then after that,
this is the Delmar Hal standoff after that.
Yes. So they're looking for the money which Gabe had found. He told, I think he basically tells Jesse to run. And so he finds the last case, fills up his bag with all the money, and then he sees a rabbit hole. And while I guess Quaylen is getting the helicopter ready, or at least standing guard near the helicopter. Then, Travers and Delmar go with Hal to find the last case. And then they're like, oh, well, it's just right around this corner. I'll go grab the case, which is what Travers said. Now you take to Delmar. He basically says, you take care of Hal and do it quietly, because there's already been so much noise to alert people within a 10-mile radius of what we've been doing. And so that's where we get the nice little monologue of Delmar where he takes way too long. And,
Yeah, it's a very funny scene though. So like basically, yes. So Delmar explains that he used to be a football player, or for American listeners, a soccer player.
And then a striker.
Yes, he was a striker, and then he makes all these analogies. He's kicking Hal. With each kick, he makes all these kind of football analogies of like, oh, he steps up for the penalty, and so he's doing all this stuff. But before he starts like beating down on Hal, like I did like one of my favorite lines in the movie is, and again, it's the intensity with which everything is said entertains me as much as the lines themselves. But when Michael Rooker, kind of takes off his jacket and stuff and is like ready to die, and like he says, he calls Delmar an asshole. And then Delmar kind of quips back that, well, I'm going to kill you, basically. And then he quips right back at him, in a minute I'll be dead. You'll always be an asshole.
Yeah. And then he rips off his coat, and I don't know what the line said, but I thought it was something like, I want to get cold, or I don't know. I like the cold. Yeah. But for some reason, he just rips off his coat. And again, that logic part of me that has popped up in many of these things, and somebody who's grown up in, very cold climate. I'm like, how are these people handling this weather like this?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I am from Scotland, and it can get pretty nippy out. Yeah. And, all these people in t-shirts and stuff, and you're like, yeah, that's not happening. But anyway, yeah, we can't apply too much logic to these films, as we've already discussed at length in some other episodes. But yeah, so like we get all these football analogies. He's going on and on about referees handed out red cards and penalty taken and all this kind of stuff. And eventually it all gets too much. And eventually Hal gets the upper hand because he, like you say, the Chekhov's gun thing, he gets that knife out, he stabs him, and then he pulls him over the ledge off the ledge of the cliff. And then he delivers another great quippy line where he says, "Season's over, asshole."
And he grabs a shotgun too. He grabs the shotgun off his back, cocks it one hand, and then blasts him.
Yeah.
While dangling for life off the cliff, he's able to also use one hand to fire a giant shotgun.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Logic.
But, no, I love
too much logic.
But that's actually one of my favorite lines. Is the season's over. He says it with like such a yell, and it's like crank up to 20 or something.
But I think again everybody's yelling. Craig Fairbrass is yelling all his lines, all his football analogies, at great intensity. He's certainly on 11 or whatever. And also, Craig Fairbrass is sporting a great early 90s mullet in this movie, like a peak henchman mullet that, is required for at least one henchman in a movie of this time period to have. So, well done him.
It's one of the things that needed to be checked off for each thing.
Yeah. Does at least one of these henchmen have a mullet? It is still 1993. This is kind of the dying days of that, I feel like. I feel like as we move into the mid-90s, the henchman mullet it moves on. Generally, mullets, either henchman mullets or hero mullets like the Rambo or Riggs, they all move on, by the mid-90s. So this is kind of the tail end of the action movie mullet.
Yeah. I think it's switched over into, which we even see in this one too, where it was like, there was one henchman at least had to have long hair, like almost long, wiry.
Yeah, that kind of, cause it becomes kind of more gothy, like, especially the very next year, 94 would see the release of The Crow and I feel like there's a lot more gothy look comes into the henchman, in the mid 90s going into the late 90s. So that becomes more of a thing. And, I also like things, again, like tattoos become more of a thing the more you get into the 90s as well.
Yeah. They had to get all those heavy metal villains too. Well, heavy metal looking villains.
Yeah, and you get like a lot of kind of lank haired kind of like, get like a lot of kind of Donald Logue type henchmen, I just, not that long ago rewatched Blade, so I think that's why I was thinking about Donald Logue. Yeah. Which never happened to him.
He'll appear on like, I don't know, stuff occasionally as somehow like a henchman or like he'll be the father of somebody, in a sitcom or things like that.
Yeah. I remember that sitcom Grounded for Life. That was kind of, he had that period of being like kind of henchman and stuff and then like, the kind of odd sitcom and stuff, but like, I've not seen him in a while. But anyway, I suppose he's nothing to do with Cliffhanger, so we should probably go back to Cliffhanger. We can do another episode where we talk more about the henchman career of Donald Logue.
Yeah. So for anybody that is interested,
please head on over to our Patreon that doesn't exist yet. So what is happening? What is happening in Cliffhanger, Craig? Tell us what is happening. The listeners are dying to know.
Gets into one of the kind of, I always thought it was, I'm not sure, I guess talking with you, one of the more iconic scenes in this, just because of the underwater element, but where Travers he finds out that the case is, Gabe got to the case already and that he put the tracking device on a rabbit. So while he's trying to find it, it's like, the device or the tracking is going all over the place.
I do want to quickly interject. Apparently, in the original cut of this movie that was shown to a test audience, when Travers snaps and he just fires into the snow, the rabbit dies, and that didn't test well. So that's why the rabbit survives in the actual film that we see now.
Okay, I was actually curious about that, but
Yeah, people get like, you know, like a guy can get mashed into a stalactite or stalagmite. But you know, like don't let a rabbit die.
Yeah. So he goes after. He starts shooting after Gabe, and Gabe jumps off this ledge and I don't know. It shows him jump off the cliff, and he like goes 20 feet in the air, just like in distance alone, not even the drop.
Yeah.
But then he follows him around, and then they come across this frozen river, and Gabe jumps or pulls him through this
bridge.
Yeah, this bridge that's old and it's been there for a long time, and Gabe falls under the water, and Travers starts shooting at him. But I think before, which again is not important to the plot at all, Travers gives away over the airwaves that he's working with Quaylen and everything, and the FBI, the agents. The
FBI and Treasury agents pick this up as they kind of follow the plot as we do.
Yeah, and so he's just saying Quaylen's name outright. So now Quaylen's all upset about that too. But again, it's not really crucial to know.
Not important.
Yeah.
Again, these scenes could be entirely cut out and it would make no difference to the film. Just like the Dude Bro scenes, you know, like, again, would make no difference to the central plot of the movie. But anyway, they're there. Fun times.
And so he keeps shooting. He finally sees, so Gabe strips down while he's under the water because clothes will sink you. And so, you know, he doesn't want to be sunk and he wants his muscles to show. And so when Travers is shooting,
got off to show off those pecs, man.
Yeah. He comes across the clear area and he's about to finish him off. But that's when Gabe pulls out a gun that he was able to find on one of the dead bodies. And he blasts Travers through a couple of times, and Travers himself falls into the water. And Gabe comes out, and he's greeted by Hal, who then, you know, obviously he's freezing because he's been underwater without clothes. But, you know, he's able to be fine again.
Yeah, he's able
with a shirt on or whatever.
Yeah. Again, magic jumper comes into play again, and he's all good after that. After, again, nearly dying of hypothermia once again. But as we all know, that can just be brushed off with a cozy jumper, and then we move on. We move on, and I think this is kind of intercut as well with. I would agree with you. I feel like it is kind of one of the scenes that sticks out in my head the most, of him like shooting the gun from under the ice. Like that's kind of I feel like probably the third biggest moment that sticks out in my head after the aerial kind of money transfer and the opening sequence. Or like the thing with the guy's gorilla pressed in this dog time is always stick out in my mind as well. Is also because it felt like wrestling. I was a wrestling fan as a kid, and it's a particularly bloody, gory moment for this film as well. But yeah, so this is also being intercut with Jessie being kidnapped, because as we've established, she's now useless. She's just bumbling about the movie, getting herself in trouble, tripping over tripwires to set off bombs, and scaring bats into action and all sorts. So like we've established she's entirely brainless and useless now.
Yeah, and so she thinks it's Frank who landed, even though. Who knows? Anyway, moving forward. Yeah. And so Quaylen is yelling for Travers, and they sit, and, Hal makes a little quip about him being, or I can't remember, take a swim, or that he's in the river, or he's going to be, I don't know, somewhere, I forgot. He's going to be somewhere in the water. Suggesting that he is dead. And then Quaylen basically says that he has Jessie, and so they can make a trade. The remaining $30 million for for Jesse. So they have to, because he captured her. And so they have to go and make this trade, which as we're reaching the end, they go up there, which Hal is not really part of. And I don't know. He kind of
he's
there,
not.
but disappears
He's not.
a little bit.
We do not see it like, so like, yes, in this kind of standoff, Gabe is standing there with the money. They kind of have this back and forth. We do not know where Hal is in this sequence at all until, like, Jesse is safely off the helicopter, and then, he kind of comes back in a minute, but there is this kind of brief moment of just like, and where's Hal? He's just standing off to the side, just doing nothing, like, just kind of killing time until his cue, I suppose. So like, it's a bit confusing as to where, Hal is at this point, but like, Gabe is standing there with a bag of cash. He's waving the cash about. He says he'll give the cash as long as, put Jesse down first, which, Quaylen obligingly does, like, surprisingly for a villain. He's just like, sure, okay. This seems like a good plan. But then Gabe he does give him the money, but he doesn't give him the money in the way he wants, does he, Craig?
No, he throws the money into the propellers, so it just scatters all over the place. And then that's when, in his kind of hysteria of what's happening, Gabe is able to take the cord, one of those latches, and hooks it to this ladder that's been established from early on, that they climb up, and has been bolted into the side of the mountain, and it's connected, of course, to the helicopter. And then that is when Hal pops up next to Jesse and begins firing the shotgun into the helicopter. And so the whole thing is going, and he's chasing after, it's kind of falling apart. He's chasing after Gabe. Gabe jumps and hooks onto the ladder itself. Then the helicopter Quaylen goes to basically fly off, but loses control. The helicopter falls, taking much of the ladder with it, but smashes upside down into the side of the cliff, making Gabe fall onto the helicopter as well, but Quaylen isn't dead. And so they begin to have a fight on top of this upside down helicopter that is on the side of the mountain.
Yeah. And somehow, it's weird as well, because like, again, John Lithgow is he's relatively kind of cuddly, so he shouldn't make a kind of good sparring partner for Stallone. But in this scene, and it's possibly just because he's wearing a really bulky black jacket, but he does look surprisingly imposing. And I suppose you do realize in this scene, there's some stars like Stallone that you kind of don't realize how small they are because of the way they're shot all the time. Yeah. And in the reverse, you kind of don't realize what a big guy John Lithgow is, because suddenly you look at them like standing side by side, and you're like, John Lithgow's actually quite a big fella. He's actually, and so he actually does look quite imposing. So it doesn't look as silly as you might think, just having seen maybe a bunch of John Lithgow things and playing more kind of cuddly characters, or playing more dramatic roles. So it kind of doesn't seem like he kind of fits in a kind of action universe, but it does kind of work, and their final battle's actually all right.
Yeah, and I also took it, I guess too, there's that part of me that was like, well, even though it's Stallone and all that stuff, well, he's been kind of for these days, with barely anything, walking around or, climbing and getting beaten up. Yeah, so maybe he's not on full strength or something.
As well as that. Yeah. I suppose, like, again, in the kind of backstory dump that we get, like John Lithgow's character is supposed to be like this former kind of special ops type guy. So we are supposed to believe that he has some like, fighting skills and stuff like that. So like, they seem relatively even matched there, but like, it's a fairly short fight. And, but again, because this movie loves its quippy one-liners, like all the best action movies, like basically Stallone stuffs him back into the helicopter and delivers the line, "Remember, shithead, keep arms and leg in the vehicle at all times," riffing on, plain advice that you get, and then we get a hilarious death, and we get this hilarious. One of those hilarious close-ups onto John Lithgow's face, and the reaction shot is great.
What I love is it's not like him yelling; it's almost like him going "ooh" or something like that. Like the way he reacts to it doesn't fit with like a normal.
Oh no, it is kind of like again. We've talked about Under Siege a couple of times in this episode, because it is the other joint highest rated film that we have covered, and there's a similar kind of close up reaction face shot when Gary Busey dies in Under Siege, and it does feel like something out of a spoof of an action movie, because they both kind of pull this face of like, ah!
It's like the face that when, I don't know, one of those like Dr. Pimple Popper is on, and the commercial for it's on TV, and I'm like, ooh. Yeah. That's the same face that is made.
Oh dear. But then everybody is now dead. So that we know when that means the movie is over. Mission successful for Gabe and the gang. So
the useless agents come up and Hal says something about, if you're looking for Quaylen, he's the one wearing the helicopter as a hat.
Yeah, he's 4,000 feet down and he's wearing a helicopter.
And then they're going to get picked up by the helicopter, which again isn't crucial, but that's it. And then it just kind of zooms out and shows the mountain, and they're all friends again. And
that's it. That's it. Reunited once again. All previous troubles now under the bridge. We mentioned a bunch of times that the movie is quite melodramatic. Yeah. Like lots of the actors seem to be full-on melodrama, and adding to the kind of melodrama of the movie is the main theme of the movie. The music was composed by Trevor Jones, and it's really quite melodramatic music, and it's not kind of typical action movie music. It feels like it should be made for like a kind of romantic western. And I noted that some of the reviews for the soundtrack of this film noted that it sounds quite similar to Trevor Jones's work on Last of the Mohicans. And I was like, yeah, that's a fair point. And and it does feel like it should score a film like that, not necessarily an action film like this. Certainly the main theme. There is other incidental music in the film that feels more kind of action-y or whatever. But it does give it this kind of melodramatic romanticism kind of throughout the film that I find intriguing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, it feels, I don't know, in a way it makes it kind of unique just because it doesn't have that similar one, but then it also feels off. More
feels
so
kind of odd.
unique.
Yeah. Like, what is this? And then, but that's it. We've covered Cliffhanger. A couple of things that I wanted to mention, like watching the random things I wanted to mention about the end credits, was I did note the kind of the harness thing that at the start of the movie that was called the Black Diamond harness. In the credits, it does mention that they had tampered with it so it didn't work. So obviously trying not to offend the manufacturers of that particular piece of climbing equipment. And also, at the very end of the credits, it mentions, it just, does a little bit of advertising for Cliffhanger, the video game, which is apparently available on all Nintendo and Sega platforms. So there you go.
I did not know there was a video game. But...
Yes, there was a video game, and it is advertised in the end credits right at the very end of the end credits. So it was not well reviewed. Like many movie tie-in video games, it wasn't. It was apparently a kind of one of those kind of side-scrolling actioners, much like a kind of Double Dragon. Which again, if you are a younger listener, which you probably aren't because you're listening to this podcast and you want some 90s nostalgia, Double Dragon was a game in the 90s, a kind of fighting game in the 90s, where your character would scroll across the side of the screen. Just type in side-scrolling games and you'll get more information. We can't elaborate too much. We've gone on long enough. Yeah.
But Double Dragon was also had its own adaptation. Which
it did have its own adaptation, starring Mark Dacascos, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some stage.
Yeah.
But we're not going to talk about it right now, because that is it for this week. We've gone on enough sideways tangents that is enough. We need to draw a line. This episode needs to stop at some point, and it's going to stop right now. But I just hope that everybody listening has enjoyed our thoughts on Cliffhanger. If you have different thoughts, or if you just want to give us a shout out, please give us comments on our Twitter page, and please rate, review, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. But anyway, that is all from me, Scott Murphy, and all from Craig.
Thank you for having me again, and enjoy Cliffhanger. It's the best one so far.
Yeah. We are going to keep on rolling with our Stallone season next week, when we will be covering another feature that we're excited to talk about. Yes, it's his other 1993 film, Demolition Man. But until then, see ya.